Welcome to Moonlight Tales by Crawford. Please subscribe for more. Thank you. The red light seeped under the heavy velvet curtain, spilling shining lights. Isla stood motionless, her bare feet aching against the cold marble floor. Around her, the other girls whispered and practiced acts, adjusting silk robes, and all, she said nothing. She'd learned early that silence was a kind of armor. It couldn't be used against her. The madam's voice echoed faintly from beyond the curtain, speaking French to a room full of men who had paid to look like they didn't care what anything cost. Tonight was the exclusive auction, not the usual service. Tonight, GL are bought. Are you shaking? Murmured the girl beside her, a petite redhead with feline eyes and trembling fingers. Isla blinked. No. But her hands were cold. Her knees locked tight. Inside, she was breaking into 1,000 glass slivers, barely held together. She had never imagined her life would end up like this. When they told her to lie about her experience, they said no one would ever agree if not experienced, she agreed. She told them what they wanted to hear. Not once. Not by a man. Or anything, her life is pure. And tonight it's going down. The curtain swept open with a sudden, ominous whoosh, and the room beyond bathed them in gold. Lot number 1, called the madam, her voice cool and elegant. Trained in Milan. Speaks 5 languages. Flexible. The first GL walked onto the stage like a dancer. Isla didn't watch. Her heartbeat drowned out, then it followed. She was Lot 7. She counted every GL before her. With each name called, she stepped closer to the stage, her lungs shrinking with each movement. And then. Lot number 7. The curtain opened again. This time, for her. Isla stepped forward. She stood still, just as Madame had said, back straight, eyes down, lips relaxed. She wasn't supposed to make eye contact. She swallowed and focused on her breathing. 1. 2. 3. It started. And then. The voices were calm. Casual. Like they were. Isla's fingers twitched, hidden by the folds of her robe. It continued. She heard the madam. Isla shut her eyes. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't. Then came a large put down. The room stilled. The voice came from the far end of the room. Deep. Flat. English accent, low and clipped. It wasn't a shout, it was barely louder than a breath. But everyone heard it. The madam turned slightly, smile tight. Silence. Not a single offer dared to rise. Going once. Going twice. She waited. Isla couldn't breathe. Gone. The gavel tapped lightly, and the room exhaled. The curtain closed behind her before she could even react. A hand touched her arm, firm but not unkind, guiding her down a different hallway this time, away from the others. Your robe, said the attendant, leave it. She hesitated. The woman raised an eyebrow. Isla shrugged the robe from her shoulders, teeth clenched, spine stiff. The woman folded it neatly and handed her a satin slip, modest by comparison. He prefers privacy. You'll be escorted shortly. She waited in a different lounge now, smaller, quieter, filled with candlelight and shadows. A single couch sat against the wall. A tray of fruit and mineral water had been left untouched on the table. She didn't sit. She stood there for what felt like hours. Her hands trembled. Her mind spun. Thinking of what just happened, the money. What kind of man spends that much without asking questions? What did he expect? What would he do if he found out, if he realized she wasn't what he thought she was? The door opened. She turned. The man in the doorway wore a charcoal gray suit and black leather gloves. His face was clean-shaven, jaw sharp. His hair was raven black, combed perfectly. He did not smile. And he was sitting in a wheelchair. Not a hospital chair. Not temporary. This one was matte black, sleek, expensive. Custom built. He looked straight at her. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. His voice, when it came, was low. "You're younger than I expected." Isla nodded once. Her mouth was dry. "Do you speak?" "Yes," she whispered. "Good." He rolled forward slightly. Every movement was controlled, smooth. His eyes, pale gray like iced steel, took her in with cold precision. "You'll come with me tonight," he said. "You'll stay in my residence until further notice." "Okay," she said, unsure if it mattered. He studied her a moment longer. "They said you were trained." She hesitated. Her pulse skipped. "I was trained," she said quietly. There was a flicker in his eyes then, small, but not missed. A pause. And then, almost to himself, he said, "We'll see." The road leading to Lucien's estate was long and winding, lined with towering trees whose shadows clawed across the pavement like fingers. The silence in the car was so deep, Isla thought she could hear her heartbeat echo in her throat. Lucien didn't speak. He sat beside her in the back seat, his body motionless in the wheelchair, eyes fixed ahead. His jaw was sharp, clenched like iron. The ambient glow from the console lights cast his face in half-shadow, making him unreadable. She dared not glance too long. Every time her eyes flicked toward him, she felt like she was being scanned, not seen, but measured. Judged. Calculated. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. The silence suited him. After nearly an hour, the car curved up a private drive and stopped at a wrought iron gate that slowly parted without a word. Beyond it stretched a sleek, modern mansion carved into a hillside. Warm light spilled from tall windows and glass-paneled balconies. The building glowed like a jewel in the dark. Isla exhaled slowly. She didn't know what she'd expected. This was, beyond it. The car stopped in front of a broad marble staircase. A valet opened her door without looking at her. Lucien waited until the driver lifted his chair from the trunk and helped him out. The billionaire moved like a man used to being carried by machines and silence, not people. He didn't wait for her. He rolled toward the doors without a word. She followed. The doors opened before he reached them, revealing a butler in a crisp uniform and a stately woman in a navy gown. "Mr. Vale," the woman said softly, bowing her head. "We've prepared the West Wing as requested." Lucien gave a brief nod. "She'll stay there." "Yes, sir." Isla felt the woman's eyes graze her face but say nothing. No one asked her name. No one addressed her. She was owned, not a guest. The halls were wide and cold, lined with abstract paintings, soft gold lights, and smooth stone floors that echoed every step. She walked behind Lucien as the woman led them deeper into the mansion. They passed rooms she dared not glance into. A library with shelves taller than trees, a music room with a grand piano dusted in moonlight, a lounge with velvet furniture and a view of nothing but darkness outside. Everything was beautiful, and silent. The West Wing was a corridor of 4 doors. The woman opened the third one and stepped aside. "Everything has been arranged," she said. Lucien didn't enter. He simply turned toward Isla. "You'll sleep here. You'll eat what's prepared. You'll remain in this wing unless told otherwise." Her throat tightened. "Yes." He stared at her for a long, unbearable moment. Then. "There are no locks on the doors. But there's nowhere to run." He turned without waiting for a reply. The wheelchair's wheels moved soundlessly across the polished floor. He disappeared into the dark, and she was alone. Isla stepped into the room. It was stunning. Not a cell. Not a cage. Not a prison. A soft king-sized bed dressed in white. A fireplace glowing softly. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. A marble vanity, silk robes in a closet, a gold-rimmed bathtub. It looked more like a bridal suite than a guest room. But none of that made her feel safe. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't a bride. She was something in between. Something unnamed. She walked slowly to the window, arms crossed over her body. The night beyond was endless. Trees swayed below. No city lights. No sirens. Just the eerie quiet of luxury surrounded by isolation. And him. Lucien Vale. She didn't understand him. He hadn't touched her. Hadn't asked for anything. Hadn't even looked at her with the kind of hunger she'd braced herself for. He was cold. Detached. But not cruel, not yet. And that displaced her more. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door creaked open. A tray was placed on a low table, roasted chicken, wine, bread, figs. No words. Just a gesture and the quiet closing of the door. She sat but didn't eat. Not until the silence grew heavier than her fear. Later, she lay in. Staring at the ceiling. The fire crackled. Her limbs wouldn't relax. She couldn't sleep. Not here. Not knowing what morning would bring. Not knowing what kind of man Lucien really was. Somewhere else in the mansion. Lucien sat alone in his study, surrounded by shelves of untouched books and the soft hiss of the fire. He stared at the monitor on his desk, a silent feed from the West Wing. No sound. Just her silhouette moving slowly through the room. Sitting. Staring. Walking to the window. He watched her. Still. Like she didn't know she was being watched. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. You're not what they said you were. He didn't believe in innocence. But something about her unsettled him. He couldn't decide if she was hiding something. Or if she was the first honest thing he'd ever got. Isla didn't remember falling asleep. When she woke, the fire had burned low, and sunlight poured softly through the wide windows like warm silk. The sheets were smooth around her. For a brief moment, the room felt like a dream, too beautiful to be real, too quiet to be safe. She sat up quickly. There were no locks on the doors, Lucien had said. But there were also no guards. No cameras she could see. No chains. Just silence, that strange, expensive kind of silence that made your thoughts feel loud. A silver tray now sat on the low table, fresh fruit, warm tea, and a folded note. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Wear the black dress. Be ready by 9. That was all. No greeting. No threat. Just a command. She unfolded the silk wrap dress that lay draped over the chair. Black, long-sleeved, delicate, beautiful, like everything in this place. Too expensive for someone like her. She hesitated, then dressed quickly. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. She didn't recognize the girl looking back. At exactly 9, the butler returned. Wordless. Straight-backed. He didn't touch her, just gestured for her to follow. Isla walked in silence behind him through the long corridor. Her bare feet were silent against the polished floor. Her heart wasn't. They stopped in front of a tall, dark wood door. The butler opened it. Go in, he said simply. She stepped inside. Lucien sat at the head of a long dining table, dressed in a black shirt and dark slacks, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows. His wheelchair was pulled up to the table with precise symmetry. A newspaper lay folded beside a half-finished plate of eggs and toast. He looked up, eyes unreadable. You're on time. She nodded. Sit. She obeyed, taking the seat across from him. A long pause. He sipped his tea. Then, did you sleep? She nodded again. Yes. He raised an eyebrow. You lie poorly. Isla's breath hitched. She stopped herself. I tried. He stared at her for a moment longer, then returned to his tea. Silence stretched between them like a thread pulled tight. Finally, he spoke again. You were listed as trained. That implies experience. She swallowed. Her throat burned. Yes. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. She felt it, the shift in the air. Lucien knew. He hadn't touched her. Hadn't even tried. But something in the way she moved, the way she hesitated, it had told him everything. You flinch, he said quietly, every time I speak. She blinked. It's not fear of me, he continued. It's fear of being seen. Isla looked down. I don't. Do you know why I paid what I did? She didn't answer. I don't believe in fantasy, he said. Or innocence. Everyone lies. Everyone has a price. She kept her hands in her lap, gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly her fingers ached. So why lie about this? He asked. What are you hiding? Her voice came out small. No one would have if I told the truth. He leaned back slightly. That's not an answer. Her chest rose and fell in silence. I'm not hiding anything, she whispered. You're hiding everything. His voice didn't rise. It never needed to. It was cold enough to cut without volume. Lucien reached for his cane, not out of need, but habit. He set it across his lap and watched her carefully. You're not like the others, he said. She looked up, startled. I don't know if that's good or bad, he added. Isla stared at him, her lips parting slightly. This man wasn't what she'd expected, either. He didn't leer. He didn't gloat. He didn't try to hurt her. But everything about him was tight, coiled like a spring that refused to unwind. You'll stay here, he said. You'll eat. Rest. You'll be given a routine. She blinked. And then? That depends on you. He wheeled back from the table and nodded toward the butler, who reappeared as if summoned by thought. Take her to the library. When she was gone, Lucien remained motionless. Her eyes lingered in his mind longer than he expected. Not because they were beautiful, though they were. But because they looked like they didn't belong to her. She looked like someone pretending not to feel. And that, he understood. He rolled slowly back toward his private study, past rows of first editions and untouched gifts from men he no longer answered calls from. His home was large enough to swallow loneliness, but never truly erase it. She didn't know yet. She didn't know what he'd bought her for. Because he didn't know, either. The library was massive, warmer than the rest of the house. Rich wood shelves, gold ladders, Persian rugs. A spiral staircase in one corner led to a second floor of endless shelves. She stood quietly while the butler lit a lamp and handed her a small stack of books. Mr. Vale asks that you read. She looked at him, confused. Read? He believes in testing intelligence before loyalty. And with that, he was gone. Isla sank into the deep leather chair near the window and stared at the books, philosophy, ethics, one novel in French. She exhaled shakily. This wasn't what she. Night fell slowly. She sat in the library for hours, flipping pages, barely able to concentrate. This place was too quiet. Too strange. Lucien Vale was colder than she imagined, but not cruel. Not yet. She had no idea what he wanted from her. But the way he watched her. The way he saw through her. That terrified her more than anything else. The next morning came with rain. It dripped steadily down the wide glass panels of tea. Night fell slowly. She sat in the library for hours, flipping pages, barely able to concentrate. This place was too quiet. Too strange. Lucien Vale was colder than she imagined, but not cruel. Not yet. She had no idea what he wanted from her. But the way he watched her. The way he saw through her. That terrified her more than anything else. That he window, turning the view of the valley below into a watercolor blur. The sky was gray, the air quiet. No birds. No wind. Just the soft, endless rhythm of falling water. Isla hadn't slept well. She lay in bed for nearly an hour after waking, watching the rain and listening to the silence. No footsteps in the hall. No knock. Just that unshakable stillness that made it impossible to forget she was being watched, even if she couldn't prove it. She rose slowly and dressed in the fresh clothes that had been left on the chair. A dark green dress this time. Modest. Soft. Fitted at the waist. It fit her perfectly. She didn't like that someone had guessed her size so well. By the time she entered the corridor, the butler was already waiting. "Follow me," he said. Same tone. Same blank expression. She obeyed. He led her not to the dining room, but down a different corridor, where the walls grew darker and colder, lined with long mirrors and no windows. At the end was a room she hadn't seen yet, a conservatory. The door opened silently. "Breakfast will be brought here," the butler said. "Mr. Vale requests you spend the morning practicing your reading." Isla blinked. Reading? There are new books inside. He left before she could ask anything else. The conservatory was stunning. A glass dome overhead bathed the room in soft gray light. Dozens of plants bloomed along the edges, orchids, lilies, ivy. A single velvet chaise faced the view, and beside it, a gold side table with a stack of books. She approached them slowly. On top sat a thin volume, The Art of Silence. Beneath it, Camus. Baldwin. Achebe. Two more in French. She sat down and stared at the covers. Why was he doing this? What did he expect her to prove? Was it a game? Or something worse? Time passed like syrup. Isla read slowly, forcing herself to concentrate. Every few minutes, she'd look up, expecting someone to be watching, Lucien, maybe, but no one came. Just a tray of food at noon. Removed silently an hour later. She wasn't allowed outside. But she wasn't locked in. A golden cage. Beautiful. Quiet. Waiting. That evening, the note returned. Blue dress. Piano room. Was larger than she expected. Wood-paneled walls. A vaulted ceiling. A chandelier that sparkled like ice. The grand piano sat beneath the window like something sacred, its black lacquer surface polished to a mirror shine. Lucien was already there. He sat beside the piano, not at it, watching her as she entered. She froze under his gaze. The blue dress shimmered slightly under the chandelier's light. It clung to her shoulders, then fell into loose, sweeping folds around her knees. He said nothing. She stood still. Finally, he spoke. "Do you play?" Isla hesitated. "No." He nodded slowly. "Shame." He rolled forward, resting a hand lightly on the piano's edge. The keys remained untouched. "I play every night," he said. "Not because I want to. Because it's the only sound I trust." She didn't understand. He glanced at her. "Sit." She sat. Not beside him, a short distance away, near the wall. "I've had women here before," he said suddenly. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her dress. "They came for a price. They left when it was paid. But none of them ever asked why I bought them. Isla's breath caught. Lucien turned toward her, gaze sharp. Do you want to know? She opened her mouth, then closed it. She swallowed. I don't know. He leaned back, eyes steady. That's honest. He wheeled closer, not quite reaching her, but near enough that she felt the weight of his presence. I didn't get you for what you could give me, he said. I got you to see if anything in this world is still real. Isla's heart pounded. What does that mean? She asked softly. Lucien studied her face. You lied about being trained. That was the first honest thing you did. I didn't lie to trick you, she whispered. No, he said. You lied to survive. Which tells me more than if you'd spoken the truth. She looked down. Silence swelled between them, thick and pressing. Then Lucien spoke again, softer. Why haven't you asked me to let you go? Her lips parted. Because she didn't know the answer. Because she hadn't decided if she was safer here or out there. Because something about him, broken and cold and terrifying, felt less dangerous than the world that had handed her to him in the first place. She didn't say any of that. She just looked up at him, eyes bare, and whispered. Would it matter? Lucien's face didn't change. But for the first time, his voice did. No, he said. But I would have remembered. That night, Isla lay awake again. She listened to the sound of the rain returning, soft against the glass. She thought about the piano. The silence. The way Lucien's eyes looked when he said he didn't believe in fantasy. He was watching her. Not just physically. Emotionally. Psychologically. He was testing what she was made of. But what frightened her most, was that she wasn't sure if she was failing. Or passing. The rain had not stopped. It whispered through the trees, across the marble terrace, and against the windows of every room in the house. The sky was still pale gray, like the world had been drained of all color except what existed inside Lucien Vale's estate, rich wood, dark velvet, candlelight. Isla was beginning to wonder if she'd ever see sunlight again. Her routine had changed. The morning after the piano room, she was not summoned to read or dine with Lucien. Instead, she was left alone. No note. No instructions. Breakfast came. She didn't eat much. She wandered the hallway outside her wing, half expecting an alarm to sound or a guard to appear. None did. The house remained as silent and watchful as ever. But she wasn't brave enough to explore far. She stayed near the library, tracing her fingers along the spines of books she didn't recognize, trying to feel something solid beneath her skin. By afternoon, she grew restless. So when the knock came, soft, deliberate, she stood quickly, heart racing. The door opened and revealed not the butler, but Lucien himself. Wearing a slate-gray sweater and black slacks, his hair still slightly damp from a shower, he looked younger than usual. Less like a ghost, more like a man. His hands rested lightly on the arms of his wheelchair. You're not reading, he said. I wasn't told to, she replied, voice steadier than she expected. He tilted his head. Do you only think when told to? Isla blinked. No. Then think with me. He turned and rolled away without another word. She followed. They entered a smaller room this time, not the piano chamber, not the study, not the dining room. This one was unfamiliar. A sunken sitting room with wide windows, soft furniture, and a fireplace already lit. Lucien wheeled to the center, gesturing for her to sit on the low sofa. He remained near the window. Tell me about your family, he said. The words were casual. But she felt their weight immediately. Isla stiffened. I don't have one. Everyone has one, he said. The difference is whether they mattered. She looked at the fire. They didn't. Lucien said nothing for a while. Then, without looking at her, he asked, was it their doing that brought you to the brothel? Or your own? She hesitated. They died, she said finally. And I owed people who don't like waiting. And they gave you? No, her voice was soft. I gave myself. Lucien looked at her then, sharply. You chose that? I chose not to starve. Silence. Not the cold, punishing silence of judgment. Something else. Something harder to define. Eventually, he said, do you resent me for you? Isla blinked. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Lucien's lips curled, not into a smile, but something like recognition. Like he saw the quiet survival in her answer. You never ask questions, he said. Would it matter if I did? Maybe, he replied. Maybe not. Another silence. Then he looked at her, truly looked, not at her dress, or posture, or surface. You don't act like someone who's waiting to be okay. Because I'm not, she said softly. I don't believe I will be. Lucien's expression changed then, subtly. Something flickered in his eyes, but vanished too fast to catch. Later that night, Isla sat at her vanity, brushing her hair in slow, careful strokes. She hadn't looked at herself like this in days. Not as a thing for sale. Not as something owned. Just a girl. Tired. Alone. But still herself. A small knock came. She turned. Lucien stood at the threshold again. This time, alone. No servants. No clipboard. She rose instinctively, unsure. He didn't speak. Instead, he wheeled toward the fire, staring into the flames. His jaw tightened. I didn't call you to the table today, he said. I didn't want to. Okay. He paused. I wasn't testing you. Isla furrowed her brow. Then what were you doing? Lucien's gaze flicked to her. I wanted to see if you would ask why. She swallowed. I thought you didn't want to be questioned. Everyone wants to be questioned, he said. They just don't know it until no one does. They sat in silence again. Then, so softly she barely heard it, he said. I remember everything. Isla turned to him. He didn't move. I remember the sound of my body hitting the pavement. The moment I couldn't feel my legs. The taste of bluff the cold. She froze. Lucien's voice didn't waver. I remember the voice of the man who did it. My own brother. The way he said it was just business. Isla's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lucien looked at her then, and for the first time, there was something open in his eyes. Not weakness, something worse. Pain. Don't think I pity you, he said. I don't. But if you think I can't recognize a person who's learned how to disappear, you're wrong. Isla's throat tightened. I'm not trying to disappear, she whispered. No, he said. You're trying not to exist. And that broke something in her. Not loudly. Not in tears. But in the way she suddenly felt every breath she had taken since arriving, had been borrowed. She looked at him. Truly looked. He was not just broken. He was haunted. She stood. He flinched, just barely. But she walked toward him, slowly. Stopped just within reach. He looked up at her, guarded but exposed. And she said, softly. I'm not the only one hiding. Lucien didn't answer. But he didn't look away either. And that was the first time she saw it, not power, not control. But the faint, flickering light of something close to human. The fire had burned low. Only soft, pulsing embers lit the room now, casting a warm red glow over Lucien's cheekbones and the wheels of his chair. He hadn't moved since she spoke. I'm not the only one hiding. Those words still lingered in the air like smoke. Isla stood in front of him, close enough to feel the subtle heat of his presence, yet still not close enough to touch. She didn't dare close the distance. He might pull away. Or worse, he might not. Lucien's eyes lifted to hers, unreadable. You should sleep, he said quietly. You're not sleeping either. His jaw twitched, but he didn't argue. She waited for him to retreat into silence again, to vanish like he always did, but this time, he lingered. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then he added, if you stay, you'll start to forget what you were before. I already have, she replied, too softly. He didn't respond. She turned and walked back to her bed without another word. He watched her go. Just before the door clicked shut behind him, she heard it, the faintest whisper. So have I. The next morning, the world felt heavier. She woke with a dull ache in her stomach, not pain, exactly. More like something pulling from deep inside her. She sat up slowly, pressing a palm to her lower abdomen. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and burnt wood. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, closed her eyes, and breathed through the strange feeling. Maybe she hadn't eaten enough. Maybe the pressure of all this, the house, Lucien, the not knowing, was pressing down on her too hard now. Breakfast came later than usual. This time, it wasn't the butler who delivered it. Lucien rolled in himself. A tray balanced across his lap. A teacup, toast, soft pears, and a folded note beneath the glass. Isla blinked, startled. You're serving me now. He didn't smile, but his voice had the faintest edge of dryness. No one else here wants to. She took the tray gently and set it down on her table. Thank you. He lingered at the doorway. You didn't ask where I went last night. I didn't think I had the right. Lucien tilted his head. You don't. But I was hoping you would. He left before she could reply. When she sat down, she unfolded the note. Be in the atrium by 10. Wear something soft. I'm not interested in pretense today. L. It was the first note that didn't feel like a command. It felt like an invitation. The atrium was bathed in gold. Sunlight, real sunlight, broke through the high windows, warming the marble floor. The rain had finally passed, and the silence of the house had turned into birdsong and breeze. Lucien was already there. This time, without his usual black. He wore a light sweater, sleeves pushed up, no gloves. His arms were lean but strong. His wheelchair sat near a stone bench, in the center of the sunlight. He didn't move when she entered. You came, he said simply. You asked, she replied. He nodded. Sit. She did, this time beside him. Not across the room. Not against the wall. Right next to him, their shoulders nearly touching. Lucien stared ahead at nothing for a while. Then, softly, I used to sit here with someone. Isla turned slightly toward him. A woman? No, he said. My mother. She was surprised by how much that answer moved her. He continued, she hated everything about our family. The money. The silence. The cruelty. But she loved this room. She's gone. She died long before my accident. I'm sorry. He looked at her now. She used to tell me, you don't have to be what made you. I didn't understand what she meant. I thought she was being poetic. Isla's voice was a whisper. Now you do. Yes, he said. But too late. Silence fell between them again. This time, it didn't feel cold. It felt shared. Isla closed her eyes and turned her face to the sunlight. The warmth on her skin felt strange. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she felt anything real. Lucien didn't move. But she felt something shift between them, not visible, but present. When she opened her eyes, he was staring at her again. His voice was rougher now. Do you feel like you're still yours? She blinked. I don't know, she said. Sometimes I think I never was. He didn't speak. He just reached out. Very slowly. And for the first time, he touched her. Just enough to feel. And then, he let go. But the electricity lingered. Then it happened. This night, Isla didn't eat. Not because she was defiant. Because her stomach twisted again, that low ache from the morning returning stronger now. Nausea bloomed at the back of her throat. She poured a glass of water. Drank half. Sat down. She'd never had a clock in the room, but she knew it was late when the knock came. Lucien again. This time, she didn't stand. He rolled in slowly, studying her carefully. You look pale. I'm just tired. His eyes narrowed. Are you ill? No. He didn't believe her. You're not eating. I'm fine. His tone sharpened. Don't lie to me. She swallowed. I'm not. A beat passed. Then softer, almost inaudible. Do you want to leave? She looked at him. And without thinking, not for a moment, she whispered. No. Lucien's shoulders lowered. Not in relief, but resignation. Like he'd been hoping for a different answer. But was still glad for this one. I'll send the doctor, he said. I don't need. You do. He turned to leave. At the door, he paused. You're trembling, he said. She hadn't realized until then that she was. Later that night. He watched her on the monitor again. Curled in her bed, still, one hand resting gently over her stomach. She didn't know he'd seen that. He watched it in silence. Replayed it. Her lips moved slightly, maybe in prayer. Or confession. Or maybe, she was speaking to someone who wasn't there. He stared at the screen a long time. And for the first time in months, Lucien Vale felt the one thing he hated most. Hope. The doctor arrived just before noon. He wasn't what Isla expected. No white coat. No stethoscope. Just a man in his late 40s with dark skin, salt and pepper hair, and a briefcase that looked like it belonged more to a lawyer than a physician. He introduced himself simply, Dr. Akin. She didn't ask his first name. He didn't ask hers. The room had been prepared for him, not the bedroom, but a sitting room in the west wing she hadn't been in before. Everything in it was quiet and clean, ivory curtains, polished floors, pale blue walls. A small tray of medical instruments had already been placed on the table. Isla sat on the edge of the chaise, arms folded over her lap. She felt like she was waiting to be accused. Dr. Akin didn't look at her like a patient. More like a puzzle. Not unkind, just clinical. Detached. The way she imagined Lucien preferred his people to be. You've had nausea? The doctor asked, checking notes. Yes, she said quietly. Twice. Both mornings. Any pain? No. Just, pressure. Discomfort. Fatigue? She nodded. Last menstrual cycle? Isla hesitated. I'm not sure, she said. He glanced up. You don't track it? She shook her head. Not in a place like the one I came from. Dr. Akin didn't flinch. Understood. He checked his watch, then motioned toward a narrow cushioned bench near the window. Lie down, please. She obeyed. The chill of the leather prickled her skin through the thin fabric of her dress. She stared at the ceiling as the doctor moved beside her with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this 100 times. He didn't speak while examining her. His hands were firm, professional. No unnecessary contact. She flinched anyway. Not from fear, from memory. After several minutes, he stepped back. "I'd like to take a blood sample," he said. "Why?" "To rule out a few possibilities." Her throat tightened. "You think it's—" "I don't think anything yet," he replied, already preparing the kit. The needle was small. But the fear was not. Her fingers gripped the edge of the bench as the blood left her arm. She didn't look. When it was over, Dr. Akin sealed the vial and placed it in a padded case. "You'll have results within the day," he said. "Mr. Vale prefers rapid screening." She wasn't surprised. Nothing about Lucien felt like a man who tolerated delay. The doctor packed up, nodded once, and left without saying more. She sat alone for a while. Her palm rested against her stomach. It didn't feel real. Not yet. But deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the questions, a small, sharp truth had begun to bloom. And it terrified her. He watched from the monitor again. Only for a few seconds. Just enough to see the way she clutched her stomach after the doctor left. Not dramatically. Not in pain. More like she was, protecting it. Lucien leaned back in his chair. He hadn't wanted to ask her directly. He wasn't sure what he'd do if she said it out loud. He didn't believe in miracles. And certainly not in something like this, not after what they told him. Your spinal damage renders natural conception highly improbable. Not impossible. But improbable. He shut off the monitor. Closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel powerful. He felt responsible. Later that night, Isla's room. A knock came just before midnight. Isla sat up quickly, robe drawn tightly around her. Lucien entered without waiting. He looked tense. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his jaw locked, but his eyes were softer than usual. "The results are back," he said. She didn't breathe. He stepped forward, holding a folded sheet of paper in one hand. When she didn't move, he set it on the table and stepped back. "I thought you should be the first to see it." She stared at the page. Didn't reach for it. "Say it," she whispered. Lucien's voice was low. "You're pregnant." She closed her eyes. Her knees buckled slightly, but she stayed standing. He didn't move toward her. Didn't ask if it was real. Didn't question her. Only said, "I didn't think I could be." She looked up, startled. "What?" His mouth tightened. "I was told it was unlikely. Not impossible. But unlikely." They stared at each other. And then she asked the question she hadn't dared to say until now. "Do you think I lied?" Lucien didn't answer right away. He moved toward the fire, slowly, silently, then turned back. No. It was the first time he'd ever said that word to her. And it broke something inside her. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. She turned her face away quickly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For being scared." Lucien didn't respond for a long time. And then, "So am I." The night after Lucien told her she was pregnant, Isla didn't sleep. She lay beneath silk sheets, one hand curled over her belly, not because she could feel anything yet, but because something inside her had shifted. Something she didn't have words for. The room was dark except for the firelight. The curtains whispered softly in the breeze from the cracked window. Outside, the estate slept. Inside, her body had become not just hers anymore. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a captive. She felt like a question mark. Lucien didn't come back. He left her with the results, said nothing more. But something about his voice, the way it had dropped when he said, "I didn't think I could be," haunted her. That wasn't just shock. That was pain. Regret. Or maybe, disbelief. The next morning, no knock came. No breakfast tray. No instructions. Isla dressed slowly, hand hovering over her belly more than once, waiting for a sign, of change, of movement, of anything. There was none. Not yet. She walked to the window. Sunlight spread over the garden below. Hummingbird hovered at the feeder outside the glass, wings flickering like a heartbeat. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know who she was now. Still a girl. A nothing. A mother. She wrapped her arms around her chest. She didn't even know what he wanted her to be. At midday, the butler came. He didn't speak. Just handed her a note. Come to the greenhouse. You'll need the sun. L. She blinked. No command. Just, concern. She dressed in soft linen and followed the path through the south wing to the greenhouse. It was quiet, warm, blooming with color. Rows of orchids, trailing vines, lemon trees in giant clay pots. The ceiling arched high overhead with glass panels that glinted in the midday sun. Lucien was already there. He sat near the far wall, in a shaded nook beneath a tall palm, dressed in his usual charcoal. His eyes were hidden behind dark glasses. Isla approached slowly. He didn't look at her. But his voice came, steady and low, sit where you like. She lowered herself onto the stone bench across from him. Neither of them spoke for a while. Just the sound of birdsong and the distant hum of bees in the citrus trees. Finally. You haven't run. Her heart skipped. I didn't know I was supposed to, she said. Lucien's jaw tensed. You aren't. But I thought you might. Why? Because the cage got heavier. Isla didn't answer. She looked down at her hands, resting on her lap. They were shaking slightly. Lucien spoke again. You're not obligated to stay. She blinked. Looked at him. That's not true, she said. You paid for me. Lucien turned toward her, removing his glasses. No, he said. I paid for silence. But now you speak. That hit something deep in her chest. She swallowed. I don't know how to be this, she whispered. This? A mother. Lucien exhaled. Neither do I. They sat in silence again, but it was different now. Not distant. Shared. The silence that happens when both people are afraid to break something fragile between them. Lucien leaned forward slightly, fingers resting on the arm of his chair. If you choose to leave, he said, I'll give you what you need. Money. Papers. A place far from this. Her breath caught. You'd let me go. I wouldn't stop you, he said. But you wouldn't want me to go. Lucien didn't answer. But he didn't look away. And in that absence of denial, she found her answer. That night, she couldn't sleep again. The estate was quiet, but her mind wasn't. She walked barefoot down the hallway, the hem of her silk robe brushing the polished floor. Something pulled her toward the atrium. It was dark, the moonlight casting silver across the marble. Lucien sat there. Alone. He didn't move when she entered. She approached him slowly, hands curled in front of her. I can't do this alone, she said. He looked up. You're not alone, he said. She stared at him. Then walked forward, slowly. And knelt beside him. He didn't reach for her. But she leaned into him anyway. Rested her head lightly against his leg. And for the first time since she arrived. He let her stay. The morning after she knelt beside him in the atrium, the estate felt different. No one said anything. The staff didn't look at her any longer like she was just a passing transaction. The butler, who had never spoken more than 5 words to her, bowed his head slightly when he handed her tea. The West Wing hallway smelled like lavender instead of sterile polish. And when Isla returned to her room that afternoon, something had changed. There was a chair by the window. A soft, cushioned armchair. Gray velvet. Rocking slightly. She stared at it. It hadn't been there before. She walked toward it slowly, as if it might vanish if she blinked. A blanket lay folded across the back. On the window ledge beside it sat a small glass bowl of sliced fruit, her favorite, mango, just ripe. She hadn't told anyone she liked mango. She hadn't told anyone anything. She sat down gently. The chair was warm, like it had been waiting for her. Lucien never mentioned the chair. Not the fruit. Not the sun filtering through the window just right so the chair sat in a golden patch of light each morning. But every day, it was there. And so was she. By the 4th day, her nausea had settled. She felt tired, still, but the fear had begun to melt into something else, something she wasn't ready to name. The absence of control. The shift of her body into something unknown. One morning, she found herself pressing her palm to the small curve of her belly in the bath, wondering when, or if, she would feel the child move. The child. Not his. Not hers. Just, there. Growing. Waiting. Lucien didn't speak of it. He didn't bring her to the atrium. He didn't knock at midnight. But some mornings, she caught a glimpse of him at the edge of the garden. Watching. He stayed far enough that she never felt forced. But close enough that she always knew he was there. Once, their eyes met through the glass. He didn't look away. Neither did she. Late that evening, she returned to her room to find another change. The closet, once filled with silk and lace and slips that whispered seduction, had been replaced. Soft cotton dresses. Loose knits. Clothing for comfort. Clothing for someone not being presented, but protected. She reached for one of the dresses and let the fabric slip through her fingers. It was beautiful, but not revealing. Modest. Gentle. She clutched it to her chest. And for the first time in days, she cried. That night, she knocked on his door. Lucien didn't speak when he opened it. But he moved back just enough for her to enter. His study was lit only by the fire. Bookshelves surrounded them like walls. A leather chair sat near the flames, and a single glass of untouched whiskey sat on the table beside it. He didn't ask why she was there. She didn't offer a reason. She walked in, quiet as breath, and sat in the chair across from him. They stared into the fire for a long time. Eventually, she spoke. Why are you doing this? Lucien didn't move. Doing what? Letting me choose. A pause. Then, you never had a choice before. No. I don't want you to think this is ownership. She looked over at him. But I am owned. He turned to her. You were, he said. You're not now. She frowned. So what am I? Lucien looked at her belly. Then back at her eyes. I don't know yet. She didn't sleep in his room that night. But she left the door open when she walked back to hers. And in the morning, there was a soft knock. Not his. The housekeeper. Smiling, gently, for the first time. Holding a box. Inside it, a pair of tiny white booties. Knitted. Handmade. Isla held them like glass, breath catching in her throat. There was no note. There didn't need to be. Lucien didn't speak in gifts or apologies. He spoke in presence. In chairs beside windows. In clothes changed quietly in the night. In fruit slices on ledges and unspoken waiting. She understood that now. And she hated how much it softened her. That evening, she wrote a note. Small. Folded once. She slipped it under his study door without a word. I won't run. Not because I'm trapped. Because I don't want to. He never replied. But the next morning, a second chair had appeared beside hers. Same gray velvet. Rocking gently. Waiting. The second rocking chair stayed by the window. Isla noticed it every morning. It was always angled slightly toward hers, never perfectly symmetrical, but never far. It made the room feel like a conversation was waiting to happen. She didn't sit in it. Not yet. But she liked knowing it was there. The days blurred into rhythm, early fruit and tea, slow walks through the sun-warmed halls, moments of reading, moments of stillness, and at least once a day, she felt him watching. Never too close. Never intrusive. But present. Like gravity. The first time she truly felt the child inside her, she was brushing her hair. It wasn't a kick, not yet. Just a small flutter, low in her belly. A soft, shifting awareness. She froze, brush halfway through a strand. Her other hand drifted down. There. Alive. Real. She didn't cry. Not this time. She smiled, just barely, and whispered without thinking, "Hi." The moment passed. But it stayed with her. Later that evening, she was reading in the conservatory when the butler appeared. "Mr. Vale would like to see you," he said. She nodded and stood. He didn't lead her to the study. Or the piano room. Or the atrium. He took her outside. The garden had changed since the last time she'd seen it. Wilder. Brighter. Lucien waited in the center, near the lemon trees, sitting in the shade with a book on his lap. He didn't look up when she approached. But he gestured to the seat beside him. She sat. Quietly. The air smelled like citrus and rosemary. Birds sang above them. They didn't speak for a long time. Then, without lifting his eyes, he asked. "What was your name, before them?" Her heart stopped. Not because she didn't remember. Because no one had asked. Not once. Not since she was taken, sold, rebranded. A number. A girl. A tag. But not a name. She swallowed hard. "Isla," she said. Lucien looked up. "That was always your name?" She nodded. "My mother named me." What did it mean to her? Isla stared down at her hands. She used to say it meant moonlight, but I think she just liked the sound. Lucien nodded once, like he was adding something to a silent ledger only he could see. "Do you want to keep the name?" he asked. She blinked. "What?" He turned slightly toward her. His voice stayed low, unreadable. "When the baby comes. Will you give them your name? Or mine?" The question wasn't an order. Or an offer. It was, genuine. Isla felt her breath catch. "I hadn't thought about it," she said. "You should." She hesitated. "Would you want them to have your name?" Lucien looked at the lemon tree beside them. Wind tugged gently at its leaves. "I don't know what my name is worth," he said. "It's the name of someone who stayed," she replied. That silenced him. They sat together in the garden for the rest of the hour, not speaking. Isla's hand drifted to her stomach again, and this time, he noticed. She saw his eyes flicker toward the motion. He didn't comment. But he didn't look away. That night, she found a name etched into the back of the wooden crib that had appeared in her sitting room. Burned gently into the wood. A. No note. No initials. No signature. Just her name. Hers. Claimed, but not taken. She ran her hand over it slowly. And for the first time, the thought came quietly, tenderly. Maybe this wasn't a prison after all. It was raining again. The soft kind. The kind that blurred the garden glass and soaked the stone paths without storming. Isla sat near the window, wrapped in a long cardigan, the baby moving gently inside her. It was no longer occasional. Now it was frequent. Real. She could feel life shifting beneath her skin like a whisper. And sometimes, when it stopped, she missed it. The chair beside hers, Lucien's, remained empty. But it was no longer lonely. It was waiting. That evening, the power flickered once. Only once. Enough for the house to go still. She heard his chair before she saw him, the soft mechanical were cutting through the quiet like breath. Lucien paused in the doorway. His eyes scanned her gently, as if checking for damage. "The storm's just passing," he said. She nodded. "I know." He looked toward the chair beside hers, then to the space beside the fire. She didn't ask. But he rolled forward, slow and soundless, and took the seat beside her. The fire cracked in the hearth. Their silhouettes flickered on the far wall. "I used to wonder what a heartbeat would feel like," Lucien said suddenly. "Not mine. Someone else's. Inside someone else." Isla turned slightly toward him. His face was unreadable. "Now I wonder what it sounds like," he continued. "Inside you." She felt her throat tighten. "You can feel it," she said softly. "If you want." Lucien's eyes met hers. Not with surprise, but hesitation. "You'd let me?" "I want you to." A moment passed. Then he reached out. His hand hovered for a second, just above the gentle curve of her belly. It was the first time he'd touched her like this. Not out of need. Not out of control. Just, to connect. To believe. She took his wrist gently and guided him. His palm settled on her. Warm. Still. Trembling. Nothing moved at first. Then, a soft roll. A ripple beneath her skin. Lucien inhaled sharply, a sound so subtle it could have been the fire shifting. His fingers stayed where they were. Isla watched him. And in that moment, she didn't see the man who had bought her. Or the billionaire. Or the damaged. She saw the father. "I didn't think I'd ever matter to anyone again," he said, his voice rough. "You matter to me," she whispered. He didn't speak. But his hand stayed on her. And when the baby moved again, stronger this time, she saw his eyes close, just for a second, like something inside him had broken. Or healed. Maybe both. That night, she walked back to her room in silence. But her body felt different. Not just because of what had grown inside her, but because of what she was growing around her. A life. A space that didn't belong to anyone else. Something shared. She changed into her nightgown slowly. Laid on the bed. And waited. Not for him. For the baby. To feel the flutter again. To be reminded she wasn't alone. And when it came, a small, firm kick against her palm, she smiled. Not out of joy. Not yet. But out of hope. And that, finally, was enough. It began with the hammering. Soft at first, rhythmic. Controlled. Not like construction. Like care. Isla stood at the top of the staircase in her robe, one hand resting against her belly, the other pressed to the railing as she listened. Down the east wing hallway, doors that were once always locked now stood open. Men moved in and out quietly. Workers. Decorators. They didn't look at her when she passed. But they all moved with purpose. The room was changing. She could smell fresh paint. Lavender and cream. And then came the sound of cloth being unrolled. Wallpaper, soft patterns. Something delicate and intentional. Not temporary. Permanent. By the end of the week, the east wing door was closed again. But Isla knew what it had become. And that knowledge brought a quiet kind of panic. She sat alone in the conservatory that evening, knees pulled close, staring at the sky through the glass dome. She had wanted this. A place for the child. A life beyond trauma. But now that it was real, being built, shaped, furnished, she couldn't shake the feeling creeping through her. Once I give him the baby, what will I be to him then? Lucien joined her that night, unannounced, as always. He said nothing at first. Just sat beside her beneath the fronds of the tall palms, his hands clasped, his eyes cast upward. It was Isla who broke the silence. You're building the nursery. Lucien didn't flinch. Yes. For the baby. For both of you. That stopped her. She turned toward him slowly. His gaze stayed ahead. Still. Steady. I won't be needed after it's born, she said. Lucien didn't answer. Not right away. But eventually, his voice came low and quiet. You were never needed. You were chosen. Isla looked down at her hands. I don't know how to live like that, she said. I do, he replied. They were both quiet for a long time. The next morning, the door to the nursery was left open. She found it by accident. Or maybe it was left that way on purpose. The room glowed. Lavender walls. Cream furniture. A large window that looked out over the east garden. A bassinet carved with floral patterns. A rocking chair near the corner. And on a shelf, books. Real ones. Children's books, cloth-bound, hand-picked. She stepped inside slowly. The scent of fresh wood and lavender oil surrounded her. No luxury. No grandeur. Just peace. She sank slowly into the rocking chair. Her eyes stung. It wasn't that someone had built a nursery. It was that someone had built it for her. Lucien didn't mention the room. Even when she joined him in the study that night, her cheeks still pink from crying, he didn't ask why. He just poured her tea. Set it beside her without a word. And when her hand trembled while lifting it, he reached across the space between them. And stilled it. I don't want to be left behind, she said, her voice shaking. Lucien's grip didn't tighten. But he didn't pull away either. You won't be, he said. Not unless you run. She looked at him. I'm tired of running. Then stop. It wasn't a demand. It was an invitation. She set the tea down. Leaned forward slowly. And for the first time, rested her head on his shoulder, not kneeling, not small, not silent. Just present. Just Isla. He let her stay there for a long time. And when her breathing slowed into quiet sleep, he didn't move. Not even once. It began with the gate buzzer. A sharp sound, cutting through a late morning breeze. Isla looked up from the nursery's bookshelf. She had been arranging the cloth books, one hand over her growing stomach, humming without realizing it. The sound came again. She frowned. The estate never buzzed. Ever. A staff member appeared at her door, tight-lipped. Mr. Vale is handling it, he said. Please remain inside. Inside. Like she was still something to protect. Or hide. She found him in the study. Lucien. Sitting in front of the wide monitor screens. His jaw clenched. One hand on the desk. The other, gripping the wheel of his chair like it was a weapon. On the screen, a man at the gate. Tall. Sharp. Familiar in the way dangerous things are familiar. Isla's blood chilled. Lucien didn't look away from the monitor. He said his name like a curse. Caleb. The name meant nothing to her. But the way he said it. She understood everything. Lucien wheeled out of the room without a word. Isla hesitated, then followed him. Down the hallway. Past the east wing. Toward the front entrance. The massive door opened just as she reached the final step. And there he was. The brother. Caleb Vale. Same bone structure. Same eyes. But harder. Slicker. If Lucien was shadow and stone, Caleb was glass and venom. He smiled. Lucien, he said smoothly. Still hiding in castles, I see. Lucien didn't reply. Caleb's gaze shifted, and landed on Isla. He paused. Let his eyes sweep her, slowly. And smiled wider. Is this yours? He asked. Lucien's voice came low. Leave her out of this. Caleb laughed. Interesting phrasing. You never used to share your toys. Isla flinched. Lucien rolled forward a fraction. I said. You think I came for her? Caleb cut in. I came for the shares. Lucien blinked. You're not serious. Caleb's smile disappeared. I let you walk away with silence. With pity. With your precious estate and your tragic charm. But that's over now. I want what I'm owed. Lucien's face darkened. You want control. I want my name back. Isla didn't understand everything. But she understood the look on Lucien's face. The fight was no longer about business. It was about survival. That night, Lucien didn't come to her. No tea. No firelight. No chair beside hers. She waited until moonrise. Then knocked softly on the study door. No answer. She opened it anyway. He was there. In the dark. Staring at nothing. You should leave, he said without looking at her. She stepped inside. No. You don't understand what's coming. Then explain it. Lucien's jaw flexed. He destroyed me once, he said. With one decision. One lie. You don't know what men like him are capable of. You're right, she said softly. I don't. She crossed to him. Kneeling. Not in surrender. But to be eye level. I only know what you are capable of. Lucien looked at her, finally. And there it was, raw. Open. Fear. I'm not a good man, he said. She leaned forward, forehead to his. No, she whispered. But you're mine. Stay tuned for part 2. Please subscribe, like, share, comment. Thank you.